So hello, welcome. This is VMware Hands-On Labs, and we're going to take a look at the VMware Cloud Foundation, the SDDC Manager Operations. And as you can see here, they've got a console that's not active, and we won't actually be using that, so it's a simulation because it just takes too long for the resources to get launched. So the simulation is pretty neat though, so we're going to take a look at that now. Let me move us forward here. And so you can see in this hands-on lab, they have an environment that allows you to go through your instructions. You'll see that if you were to follow this hands-on lab, it includes quite a few modules that run through quite a few of the areas around management and the Cloud Foundation and SDDC, excuse me. And these are the different modules, and we're just going to take a look at a couple of them in here. So I'll move us forward and just to give you a little bit of an overview. The VMware Cloud Foundation, that's their hybrid cloud platform for managing virtual machines and orchestrating your containers. And it's built on a full stack, hyper-converged infrastructure technology. And so we've got a single architecture, pretty easy to deploy, and you're going to see how easy that is. And this VMware Cloud Foundation actually is meant to enable a consistent and secure infrastructure for operations across both private and public clouds. So it's really giving us a hybrid environment, allows us to extend from both on-premise private cloud into a public cloud. And there you go. So the VMware Cloud Foundation consists of two types of workload domains, and they make up that Cloud Foundation platform. And these two workload domains really are your pools of logical resources. Each pool is made up of a cluster or even multiple clusters of your ESXi hosts, and they're managed by a vCenter server and NSX manager. So the NSX manager is providing both the network and security piece. The vCenter server, as we've seen in our labs, actually provide the management of the workloads. So each cluster is going to manage the resources of all the hosts that get assigned to those. Within each cluster, Cloud Foundation enables high availability, or HA, distributed resource scheduler, DRS, and vSAN capabilities. So there's two types of domains. One is the management domain. And there's one management domain that is used to manage the whole of your SDDC infrastructure components within Cloud Foundation, within a Cloud Foundation deployment. So you're just going to have that one management domain. You'll see that we'll have multiple workload domains. Now the management domain is automatically provisioned. It uses your first 4 ESXi hosts when the environment is initially configured for Cloud Foundation. They call that the bring up when you first deploy this. Now, the management domain contains all of the management components for this SDDC platform, software-defined data center platform. And so this is going to include our vCenter, our vSAN, the NSX-T manager controller cluster, and the SDDC manager, which we're going to get a look at, and any of the optional vRealize suite components. So you have vRealize operations, vRealize log insight, and vRealize automation. The virtual infrastructure workload domain, we're just going to call it VI workload domain. That virtual infrastructure VI workload domain is designed to run the actual business applications. So when we create a VI workload domain or domains, Cloud Foundation takes the number of hosts that you specify, and we're going to see this later on, that you specified in the Cloud Administrator and automatically deploys the VI workload domain with using VMware best practices, which should simplify things. It means we don't have to try to figure out what those are. The first VI workload domain will have its own vCenter and NXT manager controller. Now this creates this reliable and secure infrastructure for our business applications. Our additional VI workload domains, because we don't have to have just one, they can be added, and each has its own vCenter server, but the customer us has the choice to deploy a new NSXT manager controller clusters, or you can actually share the existing one. So you don't have to use additional resources to get those NXT manager controller clusters up. It really depends on what you need. Here's a nice diagram for this. And so you can see that we have here the management workload domain. And within the management workload domain, we have the NSX managers, we have the management domain vCenter, and we have NSX Edge. Then we have the NSX manager boundary here with NSX managers and workload domain 1 vCenter. So this would be the vCenter specifically for the workload domain 1 over here. You can see in this workload domain 1, it's a VI workload domain. We have cluster 1 and has vSphere with Kubernetes. We have a separate cluster that has App OS is running in virtual machines. And if you take a look down here, we have another domain, another workload domain, and then even a third workload domain. So we're going to have all these workload domains, and you'll notice that each of the domains will get its own vCenter for management purposes. And so this separates things out. So separating those management domains from workload domains, you get some benefits with this. And part of it is allows us to have dedicated resource management for our higher business application performance. That it separates those out. Security gets improved because we create separate role-based access control for the infrastructure components. And the separation then allows you to do even more granular control about who gets to access what. It also makes lifecycle management, the patching and upgrades, easier because we can have different schedules for the management domain versus the workload domain. So we can get the management domain to first patch or upgrade first, and then the workload domains can be patched at different intervals. And so it allows you more control over that. Now we're going to see that there's an SDDC manager web interface in a browser like we see for the vSphere client. So you're going to have both. So this adds another interface for interacting with the whole of the Cloud Foundation and the SDDC. That SDDC manager doesn't hide or mask individual component management products. So we can actually get access to these different kind of components and the management products for those through either SDDC itself, or through the SDDC manager, or we can open it up in a separate web interface, depending upon the product. And so in this lab, there's actually a pretty robust Cloud Foundation experience, but it is simulated. And so we will see that, although it'll appear somewhat live, it really isn't. But it's really kind of a neat tool. Let's go ahead and proceed forward. And so this interactive simulation that's being used and presented, and this is through the VMUG conference. They have a recent cloud conference. We'll be able to go ahead and start the interactive simulation from here. And that'll pop up over here. And then what I want to do is actually expand that, and that'll hide this set of instructions and allow me to proceed from here. And so now I can see my instructions in here, and I'll have to do an adjustment on everything. So when we come back, we'll actually dive into the hands-on lab.